Hello, friends. Welcome back to Vale Craftworks. I'm your host, Melkindor. How you doing? Hope you're having a good weekend, good week, or whenever you happen to be watching this. I hope the day's been okay to you. I'm going to be honest. It took me a while to figure out what kind of episode I was going to make today. And I've been thinking about this for a while, kind of hit a little bit of creator's block. But then I happened to be in a Discord with one of the crafting communities I'm a member of, and we were having a discussion. And I wanted to talk to you about 3D printers. Now, not what it's like owning one. I really wanted to talk to you about whether or not a 3D printer is a right purchase for you. A lot of people are on the fence about it. Is it right for me? Is it not right for me? I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what it takes to own a 3D printer. It is in and of itself a hobby unto itself. That might be redundant, but we're going to roll it. The first thing, as you can see, I own an Anycubic photon printer, which is on the right. To the left of that is my UV curing station. Now, you can get any number of UV curing stations. Some people like to use the ones that nail salons use. I personally picked this unit up because it's enclosed and it's I won't accidentally be like, ooh, UV light, and then blind myself. So that's just me. The one I have happens to have a rotating platform on the inside, as you can see. And once you close the door, it switches on and cures your prints. Now, the thing about owning a 3D printer is, depending upon the type you own, and we're going to specifically talk about the photon style printers, the resin printers, is that there are a number of things you have to be aware of. First, you're going to get the printer. It's going to come with a master cylinder screw on the back that raises and lowers the printing surface. And then on the bottom, you're going to have some type of vat or resin vat that is going to have a very thin film called an FEP film. That is where your resin is going to sit, and then have a LCD light on the bottom that cures it. This is just how the printers work. The two things you want to keep in mind are that that film will occasionally need to be changed, and that is a process. It is not something that's not a complicated process, but there are roughly, let's say, 40 some odd screws that need to come out of there. And then, well, no, maybe not 40, but close enough. Let's say about 25 that need to come out of there and need to be put back in a certain way. And you may have to cut the film down or for the dimensions on what you want. It's not hard, but it is time consuming. And it is not something that you're going to have to do, let's say, every week or every even month, because depending upon the amount of time that you use your printer and any failures you have, you really worry about changing your FEP if you have a lot of failures and things get stuck to the FEP film instead of being stuck on the building surface, things like that. The other portion of this really goes with the leveling of the print surface. You will have to, once you get your printer, you need to learn, and there's instructions, again, not complicated, but can take a little bit of time to, can seem a little bit daunting. Let's put it that way. At the beginning, there is, on the Anycubic, there is a leveling process, which I'm sure most of them have, whether it's a Mars or, different, one of the other brands, Elegoo, you will have to level that to make sure it is even with the print where the FEP is. There'll be a method. I know for Anycubic, they just recommend putting a piece of regular paper in there and then making sure the print surface is level to that before tightening it. There's usually one hex nut that you use to tighten and loosen that surface. That's how that works. And there is a cleaning process. Of course, when you take the most of these print heads, they come off, or the printing surfaces come off. You scrape the print off once it's done, off the build plate, and then you may clean that with alcohol. So these are things that are part and parcel of owning and working with a 3D printer. These are things that do take time, and the prints themselves They don't just print like, oh, it's not like a laser print or anything else. It takes some time. If you're going to do any sort of print, plan on spending, at least in my experience, a minimum of 2 to, up to 12, 13, even 24 hours before print is done. It depends on the scale and the size of the print that you're working on. The other thing you have to keep in mind is that master cylinder, that master screw in the back that is going to be raising and lowering your build plate, that is going to need to be maintained as well. I know after about 2 months of use on mine, it started making this noise. And of course, anytime you hear a loud noise that's when it was going down, it sounded like, a metallic noise. That means it needed to be relubricated. You want to get, in this case, for mine, I got lithium grease. That's what they said to use. And I, replaced the grease on there, and that fixed the problem right away. But these are things you need to keep in mind. This is a printer. It is an investment. There are moving parts, and you will have to do maintenance on the unit. The other thing you want to make sure you have, if you look in the next picture here, is you're going to want to own, on the right I have my grease. On the left I have my pickle jar. Now, the pickle jar is what you're going to keep your alcohol in. You need to use alcohol to clean off the resin once it comes out of the printer. You're going to want to rinse off extra resin from the print before you either trim it and remove supports and before you cure it. You're going to want to keep a supply of nitrile gloves. You don't want to use latex. Many of these chemicals will eat through latex, so you want to use nitrile gloves and keep a supply of those around. You're going to want to have replacement spatulas, which is, in my case, that little black plastic piece that's resting next to the pickle jar. And you want to get really good quality, pure iso alcohol. As you can see here, I'm using Bell products just because they happen to be really good. For me, anyway, but whatever brand of alcohol you use is fine. You want to use the 99% alcohol, the highest IPA you could get. And then, of course, you want to be using resin. You're going to be, of course, this is your paper, so to speak. The main thing you're going to be getting all your prints from is resin, and there are many different types of resin. I am using the Anycubic Eco UV resin, which is a translucent green. The color is personal preference. There's many different colors with that. I use that because I don't have really spectacular ventilation, and this is non-toxic, or less odor. Let's put it this way. It has less of an odor. And it is, again, a soy-based product as opposed to, strictly chemical-based. However, there are other types, and depending upon your situation and your ventilation system that you have, you may use a different type of resin, and that's fine. But you also, when it comes to doing the resin, you're going to need to learn a couple of things about this. You're going to need to learn the properties of your resin. You're going to want to look up a spreadsheet that has optimal settings for your resin. You need exposure times, and in some cases you need to know the density of the resin so that it affects the exposure times you're going to need to get good prints out of your printer. The other thing you're going to want to take time to do is learn how to do supports. It's very tempting to say, oh, it's 3D, I'll just get an STL file, throw it in there, and it'll print. Wrong. You need to see if the STL file is supported, if it comes pre-supported. Some do, not everyone does. And then you're going to want to go on YouTube, and there are plenty of good resources. I'll recommend 3D Printing Pro's series on supports, for one, that I learned from. As, that teaches you how to do supports, how to put supports on your STL files so that you get good quality prints. And these are all things that you will want to make sure that you're ready to get into before taking the dive into 3D printing. In some cases, if you're not planning on doing a lot of 3D printing and you're more comfortable having somebody else kind of do the printing for you, if you have a friend that has a printer, which in this hobby, many of us will know people that do have the printer and they're willing to, print it for you and just, maybe you pay the cost of shipping, whatnot. Or however you want to work that out, these are options that are available to you. I just wanted to take the time kind of today to kind of go over what was involved in 3D printing as far as a resin printer and what my experiences with that have been, so that it gives you an idea. If you're thinking about purchasing one, you're not going into the situation blind. And if you are thinking about purchasing a 3D printer, I can really honestly recommend the Photon, the Anycubic Photon, or the Photon 2, as being a very reliable printer, and it is something that I use on a daily basis. There's one other thing I want to point out before I let you go, and that is that you want to keep in mind temperature. If you can put it in a room where you can maintain the temperature easily, that will go a long way towards getting good prints out of it. You'll have a stable temperature area to work in, and believe me, colder temperatures mean you need a little bit of a longer exposure time in order to get good prints on it. And if you have a room that fluctuates in temperature, you need to be mindful, and you need to make the adjustments as necessary based on the temperature of the room that your printer and your resin is stored in. That being said, I really truly hope this video has been helpful to you. If you have anything else that you can think of that I didn't mention here in terms of printing, kind of techniques that people might want to take into effect, feel free to leave them in the comments below. That being said, I want to thank you, of course, for taking the time to stop by and check out this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, I'll see you around. Remember, stay safe, stay well, and we'll hobby together soon. Mel out.